Hello, welcome back to week 2. You survived week 1 and our first tutorial now, which I hope made things a little bit clearer. We've got through navigating Moodle and what we're actually doing with this particular unit. So today we're going to have a look, and it won't take very long, at project proposals. And you've got a number of projects that you've got to do during this unit. None of them are particularly difficult, but they're going to be very strange to start with. So the first thing we've got to work on is a work log. Now remember, these are a requirement of accreditation. The work log is something that you would need to do for the QBCC anyway. So we're getting you ready for doing that. And the days that you log in this should count towards the main log anyway. Now, just to be absolutely clear about the log, it's a weekly summary. It is not a daily site or job diary. You're going to sit down on a Friday or a Saturday and you're going to write it up. It shouldn't take too long to do. Just during the week you need to make a few notes, so have a little notepad with you or something, and then you can just pop it all together when you're relaxed at home. As I say, do it at the end of each week. If you do it on a Friday or so, then have another look at it on Sunday night, maybe, just to tweak it a little bit, because you'll still be thinking and mulling over in your mind what you've put down. And what you need to do in your work environment is you've got to pick elements or events, or maybe just parts of events, which were key to your week, that you were involved in. Now remember, as you write these key elements down, and they're meant to lead in, the work log does not stand separately from the reflective journal we talk about in a moment. The two go hand in hand. It could be a number of elements, but maybe the best thing for me to do is talk through on a tutorial about what you can put in there. At the moment, remember, what you write down is what you choose to write down. You've got to be comfortable discussing that with the rest of the group and discussing it with me. So you may not pick anything that you may think is a little bit too embarrassing, but they're probably the best ones to listen to. You need to pick a mentor at work. We talked about this last week. You've got to be very careful who you choose. Choose someone who's got their head screwed on properly. Someone who's even-handed and is used to helping other people. So be very careful. Ask around at work if anyone else has had to choose somebody as a mentor. They've got to have time to be able to do it. You probably want to spend 5 or 10 minutes each week going through your proposed work log with them. You'll also go through your reflective journal to a degree with them. You need to know them fairly well. Your work log is assignment number 1. It's 1 to 2 pages long, and it has to be for a 40-day period. Forget the percentages, we did those last week. The 40-day period is quite important. And then assignment 3, it's the same thing. Well, 1 to 2 pages for a weekly period. And we go through those in more detail when we get to the tutorial, and when you've done the first page or 2 it becomes a lot clearer to you. Remember, it's weekly. We do a number of project reports as well. So project report inquiry number 1, which is submitted. You have to select an Australian example for this. It can't be American, British, anything else. It has to be an Australian one. It's going to require you to do some research to find the information, or to find the example and then find the information. So in the beginning, as you're starting to do this, you must clearly outline what the legislation breach was. So this is a development that didn't go ahead. What did they breach? Planning control, heritage listing, environmental. Exactly why did things not go ahead? Summarise if there was any community support or rejection to it. As I said last week, there's one going on in Cleveland, in Brisbane, where I live, where they're trying to build a 3,600 apartment development on Moreton Bay, and they're actually trying to reclaim some of the mangrove swamps and that round the edge. So there's a lot of community support, rejection for that one. There's no community support at all. What's happened since it didn't go ahead? Have they amended the drawings, the plans? Have they been doing community networking and mentoring? The project itself, is it still alive? Is it being tweaked? Or has it just died a death and vanished and no one ever hears of it again? And what happened to the proponents? What happened to the developer, the council, the local community? Could be the state and federal governments as well. They would be in the guise of the planning authorities or the highways authority, or it could be the environmentalists. There's examples of supermarkets not going ahead because of environmental pressure. And did anything change with the legislation? Did they learn something? And this is like reflective learning, really. They looked back, saw the legislation didn't work properly, and then they've gone back and tweaked it or changed it slightly. Did that happen? Yes or no? But the important thing about this, you're looking at this example, as we said last week, there was a bit more detail last week, it's your personal, individual learning and reflection on this subject we're after, not someone else's, not a reporter's. We want you to research this and come up with your views. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. We'll all have a different view and we'll discuss our views during the tutorials, and we'll understand which way people are coming. They have different ideas, different experiences. Then there's a second one. So we're sort of working with a government authority on this one. You can choose one. Probably the QBCC is quite good to look at because they had a bit of input into this. So you've got the ABCC, the Australian Building Construction Commission, I think it stood for, which existed between 2005 to 2012. Did a very good job, I believe, but that's my opinion. You may not agree. You need to summarise the history of them. When did they start, which I'm telling you there, but why did they start? And what did they do in this period that they existed? Why did they suddenly disappear? Was it political pressure? Was it pressure from unions? Exactly what caused them to be wound up? But as we all know, our present government has been trying to reintroduce them. It's tried several times. It's always got stuck in the Senate for various reasons that you've got to research and find out. So when they tried to reintroduce it the first time, and remember they said if they didn't get it through it was going to be a double dissolution of government, what were the grounds for it being rejected? Who objected to it? Why did they object to it? Then they tried again, a second time. Again, what were the grounds for the rejection? Who objected to it? What facts did they throw around? Were they accurate? The second time, the government never got it through. Again, it's your ideas for a compromise. How would you have got this to work? How would you have got it back if you agree it needs to come back at all? You may not. The main union that was bandied around as the bad boys was the CFMEU, the construction one. There's been a lot of legal cases against individual members of the union, quite a lot of fraud, bribery, and you also get into the bullying, the threats and the violence. A lot of that you can say openly because it appears to have been proven in some of the legal cases. It got massive coverage over the TV the last couple of years, so there's a lot you can research in the newspapers, etc. on that one. So you should have fun with that one, really. Then there's the third project report that you have to do, your inquiry. That's just all called inquiry. It's about learning. Building a project relationship. You may be involved in this yourselves at work. I don't know what all your roles are, and you may be a small cog, but you may still be doing, building project relationships. What we're looking for is, from your experience, can you record a project, or maybe a smaller than a project, a job situation that was going wrong, souring. Nobody wanted to touch it. looked like it was slowly sinking. So you can find a project that was off the tracks and wasn't running as planned, and things were going wrong, and that could be going wrong for many, many reasons. They could be financial, could be subcontractors, could be legislation, could have been the building certified being a pain. We just don't know. How the client managed to rescue it. Notice it's the client rescuing it, not you. Did the client intervene? Did they change their project team or project manager? Did they supply more money? Did they change their design? I could go on. There's loads of reasons how the client could have turned that situation around, and that's what we're looking for. How did they save this project or job from souring? And it's what you learned, not what anyone else did, not what they said, but what you personally learned from this by observing and being involved. Did you learn why it started going wrong? May not have been your fault at all. You might have seen it from a design point of view. They made mistakes early on, but no one picked them up. Have you learned things that you're going to do differently in the future, so you don't contribute to this? Have you learned things you're going to ask more questions in the future? You're going to change the way you manage a situation. So it's about you again. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, and all of us will give a completely different answer to this. And that's what we're looking for, because we then discuss it in the tutorial, because we learn off each other. And then we get to number 4, another one. Number 4. This one's a little bit looking into a crystal ball. You can have a bit of fun with this one, hopefully. We're interested in future construction and living options. We're looking at current overseas trends. Australia's not got to this yet, but quite a few Asian countries have got to these opportunities now, especially countries which are a bit tight on land. Hong Kong, Singapore, they're a bit tight on land. Kuala Lumpur's another good one to look at. You can see failed attempts at this in Eastern and Western Europe, where we tried to build lots of high-rise communities. Didn't work. We thought that was the future then, and it's proving not to be at the moment. But what's the future of construction and the living options? We're not all going to live in the traditional Australian house, 4-bed house, whatever, with a nice backyard and a swimming pool. We're running out of materials and resources. We're running out of land, and people just can't afford them. You do see, if you look around Australia, quite a lot of apartment blocks going up. There's a bit of an oversupply at the moment, but look abroad, see what they're doing. China's got some interesting ideas. So there's quite a bit of research to be done on the internet on this. You'll find a lot of professional journals have got articles on this sort of thing. There's a little bit in the library as well. Once you've found out which way they're going, what their methods are, try to identify what the drivers and benefits are. Is it driving down the cost of accommodation? Is it getting more people per square metre on the land? Is it more economical to build this way? Is it more ecological? Are we being more efficient with our power and water use? That could bump on to reduction in commuting traffic and things. So there's a whole range that you can go and look at for the benefits of it. But of course, nothing is all positive. There's always drawbacks. You could have people say, I still want my garden lot with my swimming pool, but they can't afford it. How does it work? They don't want tower blocks next door to them. They don't want a highway near them. There's all these pushbacks and resistance against change. Change never occurs without resistance. The level of resistance greatly depends on how you handle it and how you educate and empower the populace to accept these modern ways of living. But we don't know what they are until you research them. Somebody last year came up with floating cities, which I thought was a little bit wacky and out there, but he had good references for it, so as long as it's referenced, it was okay. And then think to yourself, well, I've discovered they're doing X, Y, or Z. I know the benefits and the resistances to it. Would you be willing to live in that solution? Would you take your family in that solution? You know, your girlfriend, wife, children, your dog. Would it suit them? It may not. Or it may. So we want to know your feelings. Would you do this? And you've got to justify that. So if you say, yeah, I'd go and live in whatever it is, you say, because 1, 2, 3. And if you don't want to go and do it, you've got to say, I don't want to do it because 5, 6, 7. You need out of these to get at least 19 out of 38 to pass. Okay, that can't be too hard to do. I'll have a look at these things before you finally submit them on Turnitin through Moodle, and we'll discuss them in detail during the tutorials. That's exactly what the tutorials are for, so we can just discuss. It's not me talking, it's you lot all talking to me and each other. So that's the hurdle you need to pass. Next week we're going to talk about the reflective journal. You could probably do a little reading on reflective journals. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about them. Basically, we use a model that's known as a situational reflective analysis model. There you go. Google away on those for next week. I won't tell you too much about it until next week. Part of the journal, you've got to go back and have a look at the university's graduate attributes. The interesting thing is, as we go down and you see each week being revealed to you, there are little 1 and 2 page guidelines for doing this work. At the moment I've got the workplace logbook and the project report and indeed the reflective journal sitting in front of me, but that's for next week. So you can do a little bit of work on that if you want. And remember, you've got to develop your own lifelong learning methodology. You would have heard old people like me say, you never stop learning. And you think, that's a load of rubbish, but you don't. Doesn't matter how good you are at something, you will either make a mistake and learn from that. You may meet a new member of staff or change jobs and see a different way of doing something that you adopt. You're always learning. I mean, the basic thing, if you stayed in the same job for your whole life, you're still going to keep learning, even if it's just you're learning the new legislation as it develops and changes. So never assume you know everything, and never assume your way of doing something's the best. It could be, but it may not be. So don't get cocky, as the English would say. It's all about your own learning and how you're going to go about that learning. It's like planning your career, so you know where you want to be in 3 years and 5 years. And all of this needs to be shared with the rest of us in the seminar, in the tutorials. So you've got to be open to talking about it, and when someone says something you can ask them questions, and because we'll all learn from that as well, and they normally go down really, really well. Just to top off there, but when you do the reflective journal, you've got to be clear. It's learning by doing something, and then sitting back and thinking, oh, I did that, what went right or wrong? So you reflect on what happened. It's got a trendy educational name of a kinesthetic or a tactile model. Feel free to go and Google that one. But it's learning by doing something and then analysing what happened afterwards. Maybe analysing is better than reflecting. Might mean more to us all. And we do this by observing, and it could be other people you're learning from. So you observe, then you sit back and ponder and think about it, and then you decide on an action to do. And then at the end of it all, you review what actually happened. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's like a circle, goes round and round and round. And successful people tend to do this for their entire career. You begin to do this subconsciously after a while. You don't know you're doing it. At the moment, it'll be like giving birth to a baby elephant, because you've never done this. It's going to be very uncomfortable to do. But by the end of the 12 weeks, this will be ingrained in you, and you'll be doing it in your own head. You won't have to write it all down. So that's the end of a very short lecture, just to introduce you to those projects that you need to do, and to give you enough. I'm going to release a few more of the weeks in Moodle, so you can at least get to some of these little handouts that are in there. But there won't be a lecture, because I'm still recording them. So don't get worried if you go into like week 4 or something, there's no lecture. I tend to put the lectures up the week before. So that's it for now. I hope you all managed to work out how to use Moodle. I had a good flick through Moodle today, just adding in a question and answer session and a few other bits and events coming up which should remind you when assignments are coming up to be due to be submitted. I'm hoping you've got your worked your way around that one, but any problems then we'll talk about it in the tutorial. Apart from that, that's the end of the lecture for this week. Nice and short. It's all about you going to do the research.